Hello, I'm Jimmy Nichols, Commercial Content Editor at The Grocer, and welcome to the latest webinar from the Grocer Vision in partnership with Avery Dennison. Shoppers' expectations of grocery have radically shifted during the pandemic. Delivery and click and collect services have seen a new lease of life, with omnichannel integration becoming even more key. And at the same time, checkout-free stores are slowly being rolled out with the promise of transforming the retail experience. These emerging trends have a common link, that's digital ID. As we ease out of lockdown, the grocery sector must equip itself with the latest data and sensor capture technologies, including radio frequency identification or RFID. In this webinar, we are going to be discussing how these trends will play out across retailers' top 5 challenges. This includes how digital ID can transform inventory management, omnichannel adoption, supply chain transparency, sustainability, and other operations within grocery. Joining me is Peter Jackson, a Global Market Development Manager at Avery Dennison SmartTrack. Peter leads strategic market adoption of RFID in the global food sector, helping brands and retailers leverage intelligent label technologies to improve process efficiency, consumer convenience, and traceability, while establishing product provenance and reducing food waste. Also on the panel is Natalie Berg, retail analyst and founder at NBK Retail. Natalie specializes in retail strategy and future trends, having co-authored 2 books on retail and led research on topics including reimagining retail for a post-pandemic world, the convergence of physical and digital retail, and building the store of the future. So to begin, Peter is going to lay out how the pandemic has changed the context for some of these trends. Peter, I'd like to pass it over to you.
Good. Thank you, Jimmy, and welcome everyone. So how has retail shifted post-pandemic? Well, before we get into a bit of more detail, I'm just going to give a quick update on RFID, or what is RFID, in a little bit more detail, just a couple of seconds. So first of all, generally RFID is either a tag or a label with a pre-printed face stock. So you can add the best before date, the price, etc., etc. It also has an embedded data chip. So there's a couple of things that are really important about that. First of all, this gives it a unique identity. So the tag and then the product, etc., everything has a unique identity. Also, it's what we call a one-to-many technology. So slightly different from, for example, a barcode or QR code, which you need to scan or read one at a time. With RFID, you can read many. So hundreds, or for example, with the latest readers, you can actually scan and read over 1,000 tags or products in a second, literally. So this all of a sudden starts to bring one speed to any process, but also a lot more of the transparency and accuracy that is needed in today's digital world. So that's just a little bit about sort of where we are, RFID, and how does this lead to, and help benefit from a grocer point of view, and then ultimately the consumer. We've all seen a number of these options and challenges on here. So if we were to talk about omnichannel, so with omnichannel, omnichannel consumers shop more frequently and will spend up to 20% more when obviously they're shopping via omnichannel. Also, what we found in Q1 of this year was that after somebody had shopped online with a grocer, 70% went on to shop a digital format or omnichannel within the same quarter. So clearly this is the way the market's moved, and moved very fast. We've seen that. If we talk about unmanned stores, so we've all looked at and heard a lot in the news about, for example, walking into a store, generally convenience stores today, picking up the items and then either walking out, or it's a case of scanning as you move around the store and then walking out. Well, we're doing this with RFID today, and I think that's going to be the big point today. Is a lot of what's happening, or you're hearing about in the marketplace, is happening today. It is actually doable. And what we're doing, we have convenience stores where you walk in, you pick up maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 items around the store. You go to the point of sale, it reads all of the items with the RFID tag attached in literally a couple of seconds. You pay and you walk out. So this is happening. And again, this is all part of the benefit, one, to the consumer, but also the retailer and moving back through the supply chain to give that inventory sort of accuracy and detail that's needed. And then finally, if we look at the RFID, it talks about RFID, vision, AI, etc. What we're finding now is that all of these technologies, and RFID particularly, plays well with these other technologies. And we're seeing that sort of convergence and coming together of the various technologies to really help and enhance for the retailer, but also for the consumer. A little bit here about the digital ID in the food sector, and we sort of start on the left-hand side here, where we all talk about the speed for the digital experience and the growth. We've heard many CTOs or CEOs talking about where their plans they had for the next 3 to 5 years had to be implemented within 3 to 5 months. So clearly that's all moving fast, and all that omni-channel experience is all great. But what you need is then on the right-hand side, you need it, one, to be joined up. It needs to move very, very quickly. And you need the accuracy. You need to know, where are your products? How is it working for the best before date? All of that needs to move so much quicker in this much consumer digital-led way now that is being expected. And this gives a good example of the acceleration as we all move forward and our expectations of when we shop. And then just to finish off, just literally a few statistics here. So if we talk about the increase in shelf life, really what's happening there is that's great and that's good. And what that adds to is the various layers that we now see and the benefits of RFID. So for example, that will help reduce food waste. And we all know that's one of the biggest challenges facing the world today is the amount of food waste. Over a third generally of all food produced is wasted. In some regions, it's up to 40% now of all the food produced is wasted. So clearly, we've got to do something about that. The growing population, we're going to have to move forward. And I think certainly the generations coming through are absolutely going to expect it. And then finally, when we talk about the SKU accuracy of, we're moving up to 99% plus, that's absolutely critical. And this is where RFID really comes into its own, because one, it gives you that unique identification. So if you've got 500 cans of a cola or you've got 400, but exactly each can or the food or an item, whatever it might be, down to the item. And you need to know where it is within the supply chain to support all of these operations in a much faster, and we're going to get into whether it's click and collect, all of those parts in store, etc., is becoming more important. So on that, back to you, Jimmy.
Thanks very much for that, Peter. Natalie, I wondered if you could kind of pick up where Peter left off there and give your own assessment of the state of digital ID or sensor technology more broadly within the grocery sector, and both from like a UK perspective and also I think from a broader perspective, because I know you can bring in that kind of expertise.
Sure. Well, I think Peter set me up really nicely there because he touched on some of the themes that I think will run through this entire webinar. And we have to remember that customers are used to shopping on their terms, and the pandemic has just absolutely cemented that. So I guess to start, I'd say that the retail industry, as we all know, is no stranger to disruption. So the sector, the grocery retail sector in particular, was undergoing seismic structural change before the pandemic hit. And I think in many ways, retailers were well equipped when COVID struck because they've had to learn to be agile and to pivot as they were transforming for the digital era. So pre-COVID, Amazon was the primary catalyst for change in the sector, forcing retailers to invest in e-commerce, to digitize their stores. So there was already a lot of experimentation happening before the pandemic hit. And as Peter just said, when COVID struck, it took weeks and days even, rather than months and years, for change to happen. So although the pandemic has exacerbated many of the challenges facing the sector, it's also accelerated many of the trends, particularly around the shift to digital, that were brewing pre-COVID. And so for me, because there's a lot to say, and I'm sure we're going to get into all of this in more detail, but to sum it up, I think the the pandemic has accelerated three main trends for me. One, the obvious shift to e-commerce. Supermarkets were at the very early stages. They were focused on feeding the nation, and it was commendable how quickly they pivoted, and also diverted customers to their least profitable channel, which is e-commerce. We saw Tesco double the number of online delivery slots to 1.5 million per week. And also we saw retailers look to get creative and get around the tricky economics of home delivery by moving customers towards click and collect, which is a great halfway house when it comes to bridging online and offline. And it's very much something that I think will stick post-COVID. So we've seen some really great innovation there. We saw Morrison's go from offering click and collect in just 6 stores at the start of the pandemic to around 300 stores by the summer. Sainsbury's, for example, they said that they were doing more click and collect orders in one day than they were in a whole week before the pandemic struck. And also Aldi, so a discount supermarkets who really struggle to make the economics of home delivery work, they look to click and collect. Aldi rolled it out to a couple hundred stores as a way to keep up with this burgeoning demand for online grocery in a sustainable way. So for me, I think the shift to digital, the convergence of physical and digital, so click and collect, but also using tech in stores to bring the bricks and mortar store into the 21st century and addressing the key points of friction, which is, as we all know, it's the checkout. So Scan and Go went from pretty much being an industry trial, a decade-long industry trial, to suddenly being thrust into the mainstream out of necessity, because customers didn't want to go in and spend a lot of time in stores, and they didn't want to touch products in stores. So it was all about getting customers in and out as quickly as possible. And so frictionless shopping and safe shopping sort of inherently go hand in hand. And we saw a real increase in the adoption of that, of using that technology in stores. And again, I think once you get used to that experience, and I think that really will stick with COVID. And the third thing for me, it's not so much grocery related, but it is worth pointing out, is I think the pandemic has accelerated the demise of mediocre retail or status quo retail. And it's just this idea that, you have to stay relevant. You have to continue to adapt. For years, I've been talking about retail Darwinism. And during the pandemic, I think what we've seen is retail Darwinism on steroids. So we've sadly seen some very big brands disappear from our high streets. Arcadia, Debenhams, TM Lewin, for example. Again, grocery is a little bit more insulated here, but I think it's worth pointing this out because it just highlights the necessity to stay relevant to your customers and continue to evolve in order to ensure that you're meeting them on their terms.
Thanks very much for that, Natalie. I wondered, Peter, if you could actually pick up on some of the opportunities for omnichannel that Natalie's very much touched on there. A lot of that stuff going on during the pandemic. As we move out of the pandemic, what other opportunities do you see? How do you think Digital ID is going to feed into omnichannel offerings at grocery stores?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely, Jimmy. And I think Natalie, of course, making some excellent points there, and almost bringing it all together where we're now seeing where we are and what the picture is. And I think a lot of it is almost e-commerce should be viewed in terms of customer loyalty rather than the individual channel economics. And I think what's happening there is this sort of impact on the digital innovation is, so for example, the accuracy of knowing where the products are. And I touched on it a little bit earlier, but we really need to understand, the retailers need to understand their accuracy of their products. And then what this is doing is helping all the other layers that go along with that. So it's, as we talked about, being able to manage your inventory, the best before dates, making sure the right product is either out on the shelf or available. We're seeing these micro fulfillment centers within stores. Now, I mean, I think we're in that phase also of, the stores are clearly opened up a bit more. I think people are going back to the stores quite a bit more. So there's now that balance of ensuring that we can support that digital sort of online community, but also people who are going to drop in or still want to click and collect. And it's all got to come together. So I think having that understanding from a digital point of view is absolutely critical. And Natalie summed it up perfectly. That's exactly what we've seen, what we're still seeing, and it's growing. It's continuing to move, and it's such a pace for everybody.
Natalie, Peter touched on inventory management there, which is probably not as visible to the consumer, I think it's fair to say, but a very important part of grocery. So I was wondering if you could elaborate on some of his points and just say what you think the impact of digital ID is going to be on inventory management going forward.
Yeah, sure. I think Peter's highlighted some really good points there, particularly around how we'll shop once this is all over. So there's a great quote from the CEO of Lidl saying that actually he doesn't believe this is the new normal. He thinks this is the temporary normal. And no one really knows at this point, do they? I think if you look at a retailer like Lidl, they've got a lot of stores. They don't have a very strong digital presence. So naturally, they would want customers to come back into their stores and to revert back to their old ways. Whereas if you look at Ocado, for example, Ocado CEO Tim Steiner saying, actually, he thinks that e-commerce in grocery is going to double again in the next few years. So the complete opposite end of the spectrum. And of course, Ocado being an online-only retailer, that's the way that they see things moving. I feel like it's somewhere in the middle. It's still early days. I think naturally, as Peter's alluded to, we're seeing more people now having had their second vaccination, getting more comfortable going back into the store, and also longing for that social element that a physical store offers. At the same time, I think there will be a lot of stores that have tried online for the first time, have maybe been pleasantly surprised at how seamless and effortless it is to have groceries turn up on your doorstep, particularly when we bear in mind that during the pandemic, a lot of retailers invested very heavily in rapid delivery. So it's not like you've got to, book a slot and plan your meals for a week's time. It's very much moving towards same day, 2 hour, 1 hour, 15 minutes. So I think there's just been so much change, and it's just gotten better and better and better for the customer. But as you say, that makes it a lot harder for the retailer to know who their customers are, how to serve them, and do they want to shop online? Do they want to shop in store? And as Peter said, those shoppers that do both are the most valuable shoppers. They're the ones that are, going to generate that strong loyalty to the brand and will continue to shop with them. So it really, again, it comes back to meeting customers on their terms.
Peter, I was wondering what you think some of the data insights that can be gathered from, RFID, how that kind of plays into some of the things Natalie was just talking about there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's fascinating. We're living this time through this time at the moment where it really is fascinating, changing. And I think a lot of what we see, and I would still absolutely say the grocers did a fantastic job through last year. They went from, I think, generally the statistic was sort of 7% of people shopping online to 27% in literally a couple of weeks. So that all that went with it, and everywhere was fighting for the same sort of food source. So I think they absolutely did a great job. But what it showed, or what it highlighted, I think, really, Jimmy, is that a lot of the processes were or are still manual, and they're trying to support a digital customer. So, as Natalie was saying, where they want it, whether it's online or they want to be able to place the order, they want to see it, and they want to be able to trust that product's available. And a lot of that's where the digital ID is really important. There's nothing, I'm going to say, in the world of food shopping, one of the most frustrating, not nothing more, but one of the most frustrating is you've placed the order either turns up or you go and collect, and then there's a substitution, and it's not really what you want. It's not the substitution you want, or it's just not quite what you expected. And I think by having that very clear in real-time visibility of where your product is, what it is, and all that goes with it, then that's enhancing the consumer experience. So we're at a stage where already it's digital. We've already got to move very quick and move fast, but now we can do it in a way that's very accurate. And I think that's the sort of almost now the step that we're just moving over to where that's the expectation. If you order it, you want to know if you order it, it actually exists and it's there. And secondly, when it turns up, it's what you ordered.
So you've touched there on consumer expectations, and something that was brewing before the pandemic, but I think it's become only more prominent, is the conversation around sustainability and consumer expectations in terms of what grocers are doing. So, Natalie, picking up on sort of from where Peter left off there, how do you think that having more information from things like digital ID, from RFID, and so on, is going to help grocers and the supply chain fulfill what customers want and expect in terms of sustainability?
Well, I think that in general, we need to acknowledge that customers have, and we've already sort of touched on this, but this idea that customers want to, particularly when it comes to grocery shopping is unique in that it's habitual. It's something that we have to do because we all need to eat. We do it every few days, every week. It's unique in retail in those respects. And so I think some retailers are looking to come in, some tech companies are looking to come in and disrupt that experience. And as we've touched on, make that experience more frictionless, more seamless, and ultimately take the chore out of it. Because to some shoppers, it is a chore, right? It's something that we've got to do all the time. So I think naturally that means getting customers used to, using their phones when they come into the store. And again, COVID has accelerated that. The idea that, most sales now across all retail, not just within grocery, are digitally influenced. And oftentimes it's quicker to check, product information or product reviews or whatever it might be on our phone, or check a recipe if we're in a supermarket, than, going out and trying to find a member of staff. So I think consumers have gotten very used to their mobile phones as almost an extension of themselves when they're shopping. And I think when it comes to grocery, I think there's opportunities for more personalized promotions. Obviously, we've touched on checkout free shopping, also navigating the aisles, finding products, essentially helping you get in and get out as quickly as possible. But moving beyond that, that's all the kind of basic hygiene, kind of the functional stuff. But I think moving beyond that, what we're starting to see now is a change in customer expectations. And I think COVID has had to put some of that on hold for the sake of safety in terms of plastic packaging. And I mean, I remember getting my eggs in plastic boxes because there was a shortage of, whatever packaging, more sustainable packaging out there. So I think on the one hand, yes, we have had to put some of that on hold, but also I think that COVID, speaking more broadly now, has humbled us as consumers. And I think it really has change our views and what we expect from each other. We talked about Gen Z and younger demographics having different expectations of retailers, and I think looking more broadly, I think consumers will look to align themselves with those brands whose values reflect their own. I think that's becoming certainly more of a thing, more so in non-food, but increasingly in grocery. And I think when it comes to things like packaging and food waste, as Peter alluded to earlier, these things are going to become more and more important to consumers. And also, just very briefly, I think we're going to see more things like Tesco's partnership with Loop, for example, where customers can reuse the packaging, send the packaging back to have it cleaned and then reused. I think these are things that customers will increasingly expect from supermarkets. Also, when we're shopping in store, we've seen more and more of these refill centers. It started out with Waitrose a couple of years ago as a one-off trial, and now we've got Aldi, M&S, Sainsbury's, all these supermarkets moving more into refill, and also now testing refill within regular aisles, so moving it away from a segregated section of the store. So I think that's just a sign that circularity, this whole idea of becoming more sustainable and thinking in a more green way is being thrust into the mainstream, and supermarkets have to adapt.
Peter, is there anything you'd add to that on the sustainability issue?
Yeah, well, I absolutely agree with all of absolutely what Natalie was saying. I think, the whole bit about where the consumer expects, so from a food safety point of view, whether that's, buying something, the food product to then, cook yourself, or it's ordering a pizza. People want to know that food is safe for their family. So there has to be a lot more transparency, and that's an expectation. Certainly, we've seen the whole bit about the sustainability part. So the packaging, generally we need the packaging. So, it keeps the food safe, it keeps it fresh, etc. But we can do a better job, I'm sure, of how we manage that and how we use it. And the whole reusable part, and whether it's plant-based, for example, we don't want to mix that up with non-plant-based. So all of these elements are coming together, but it's this happening quickly, but also it's how people expect it, but it's also quite right. You should be able to walk in and if you want to refill with the packaging, so you're only paying for the product, you're not paying for all the packaging, you're doing the right thing and doing a good thing for the planet, then absolutely, we should be encouraging that. And I think businesses are realizing that actually it's good business to do good. And I think that's a big shift that is over the last couple of years. I think it's highlighted more in the last couple of years. But I think generally now businesses are saying, this is the right one. This is the right thing to do, but it's good business. So it all starts to add to it, I think, Jimmy.
We've got a couple of audience questions that I'd like to turn to. This one I think will probably be a good one for you to answer, Peter. Frida from Malaysian Green Technology and Climate Change Centre asks, what challenges do retailers face when implementing this new technology? So, and that would include all forms of digital ID, but specifically, I guess, RFID. So do you want to answer that question for her, Peter?
Yeah, sure. No, and thank you for the question. I think the challenges are probably that the system that's been or the process and the system that's in place has been there for many years. It's been, they've been doing it for a long, long time and successfully doing it. But the change in this digital format over the last few years clearly means that the way things were perhaps being done in a very manual way, as I mentioned earlier, means that the consumer is ordering or wanting to interact in a digital way, but then you start to slow that process down because it's a manual way to deliver. So the two have got to come together where the digital is seen, and they want the choice and they want to shop on their terms. So I think the challenges are what has been going on for a long time to start to change that, as they have in a lot of areas. And I think the first change was let's get the food to where it needs to be, and we've got to move quickly and it's online. That we've seen over the last 12, 18 months. The next part will be back through the supply chains, which will bring transparency. It will bring much better traceability, and all the other elements that go with that, Jimmy, as far as wanting to know from an ethical point of view, the source of the food, maybe where it was produced, how it was produced. And I want evidence of that, and I want to see it now. So it's rather than looking it up or finding out a week down the road, I want to know now. And that's a lot of it. So the complexity is bringing that through, being able to do that in a digital way. And of course, food, and for the grocers, is quite complex. The food can come from 1 mile away to the store, or the DC, or it can come from 5,000 miles away, and everything that goes with it. So there's quite a lot of complexity, but Natalie said it earlier, the grocers have been very good at adapting and changing and adding these layers and adding the digital experience. They did it very, very quickly. I'm sure there's a lot of stress and a lot of pressure on them, but they did it. And here we are now. So that's what I would say. I think there's the complexity just to bring it in. But the big thing is we're doing it. It is happening today.
Natalie, I think you did say earlier that many retailers surprise themselves by how quickly they can get some of these tech projects off the ground if circumstances demand it. So do you think they might find that some of these new technologies, and I want to broaden it out beyond RFID to things like vision technology and checkout free stores, do you think they might find that these are actually easier things to implement than they initially appear to be?
Yeah, I think that it helps to have a hungry consumer, a consumer who's used to the technology now, and that makes adoption all the easier, and the decision to invest in it easier as well. I think when it comes to checkout free shops, there's a lot to say just around this specific technology that we're seeing, where some retailers are enabling customers to literally just walk out, which feels a little bit like shoplifting. So I think there is an element of, it's almost so easy that customers can't believe that it's actually, that good. And I think once you get a taste for that as a customer, it's really hard to go back to waiting in long queues at the checkout. So I think I do think that checkout free shops, I think that will be a game changer for the convenience segment in particular. for travel retail, airports, hotels. I mean, this will be the norm within the next 5 years or so. But also stadiums and cinemas and any kind of time-sensitive shopping occasion where you just want to, times of the essence, and you just want to get in and get out as quickly as possible. And naturally, there will be other times, other shopping missions where actually, retailers do want to keep you in the store a little bit longer. They do want you to stick around, and they don't want you to get out as quickly. So I think it's about balancing that. And it's also about balancing the customer experience, because sometimes seamless can translate to soulless. And a criticism of too much technology, too much automation, is that these stores can feel a little bit cold and uninspiring. And, consumers do value that human touch, particularly now as we're emerging from various lockdowns over the past 18 months. I think in non-food and in grocery retail, that's going to be a real sticking point for physical retailers, and a real way to differentiate from the utilitarian nature of shopping online, because for all its perks, it is still very functional. And I think consumers are desperate to get back to a sense of normalcy and have that engagement with human beings and other people in store. So I think there's an element of that as well. So it will be a balancing act, but I very much see it as a game changer, particularly for those more convenience-led shopping missions.
Yeah,
Peter, I think you... Sorry, go ahead. You go ahead, Peter.
No, I was just going to add on to that as well. I think one of the interesting areas we're seeing at the moment is the work from home back to office situation. And of course, so a lot of areas within the city centres, and a lot of, whether it is convenience stores or all types of stores that were effectively, they were placed and located around that sort of inner city and perhaps where a lot of the office blocks were. What does that mean for them now? So as if they're trying to stock their stores, if they're trying to manage that, and if there's a particular office block nearby that maybe 5,000 people used to turn up every day, next Tuesday, is it going to be 4,000 people? Is it going to be 500 people? And it's a real unknown. So that's one of those sort of quirky ones that you start to think, well, how do we manage that? How do we start to know what we're doing from a digital point of view, and what will those people want to do? Because I think people will start to go back to the office, but in what levels? And of course, there's a lot of stores all based around, as I said. So I think that's just adding to what Natalie's saying, is that whole, what is the new norm, if that's such a phrase anymore, but it's really going to be managing that. And that's all part of that digital experience of understanding and moving around so that people can still shop if they want to pop out at lunchtime, and that product is available, whatever that might be. But it's a challenge for sure. And that's why that real-time information is important.
Natalie, I've got another audience question that I'd like to put to you. This is Niaz from Qless. Will convenience stores be able to withstand the online delivery wave from the likes of Wheezy to Deliveroo? I suppose, bringing it back to our chief topic here, how does digital ID play into that kind of trend? Because it's been a huge one throughout the pandemic, and it's something that a lot of people are very interested in.
Yeah, so I think it is really interesting, and no one really knows how far this will go. We've seen over the past 18 months or so a whole slew of startups move into this rapid delivery space, where they make the likes of Deliveroo and Amazon look like laggards, because they'll get you groceries within 10 to 15 minutes from the time that you order to the time they deliver. Now, it's a very different model. Customers obviously have to sacrifice assortment for the sake of getting groceries to your door in that short space of time. So you're normally looking at around 10,000 products or whatever, versus roughly in the 10,000 product range, versus say 40,000 that you might find from a traditional online supermarket or more. So I think there is that sacrifice that customers have to make, and also the big question is it viable? Can these startups need scale in order for this to work? And there are a lot of them at the moment, all trying to go after the same customer segment. So there clearly will be some consolidation. They won't all make it. What will be interesting to see is if some of these startups, I should mention the Wheezy, Getir, Gorillas, they all have slightly strange names, but they are disrupting the market. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how, whether or not that potentially be an acquisition target for some of the big supermarkets. That's, I think, a very, that's a potential scenario that we could see in the coming years. But I think what's really interesting is as we get back to some normality, clearly some shoppers will want to go back in store and will go back to their local shops for those top-up shops. But it's interesting to see how these 15-minute supermarkets are trying to take the top-up shop online. So take that convenience grocery shop online, which has never been done before because, again, the economics just really don't stack up. But their model is very different in that they're using railway arches, they're using dark stores, old office space to get as close as possible to the customer in order to deliver on that 10 to 15 minute promise. So I think it'll be really interesting to see where it goes. There was a great quote from, I think it was the MD of Getir a couple weeks ago, which is that he says they're trying to democratize the right to laziness. And I thought that just really sums it up. I mean, will we go back to our walking to the shop when we run out of eggs or milk, or will we just have everything on our apps? I mean, I guess as customers today, we really are spoiled for choice.
Yeah, and just on that, I mean, we're just, again, this is where I think there's a lot of experimenting because the technology's there now. It's sort of, let's experiment, let's see what sort of, get some traction, get some, some excitement, and then starts to scale. And as you say, then there'll possibly be some consolidation or, some acquisitions. But yeah, I mean, we're actually working at the moment on a project which is autonomous vehicles. So we've seen the autonomous vehicle, in a number of areas within the UK, with a number of the retailers, grocers, delivering an order on your app, and the robot 4 wheels comes around, delivers to your house or location. But we're working on one that, with a company, that is actually a van full of product, and then on your app you effectively order the van to come to you, and then you pick your items that you want. And they're doing a pharmacy version and they're doing a food version, so it's all the sort of convenience store type stuff. So it's that, exactly as Natalie just said, I need some milk, some bread, actually I might just need a couple of other bits. I'll get the whole van to come to me, and then take what I want, and then it's all done via an app. It knows who you are, it knows who's paying, etc. So, I think it's all going to be a bit of a theme of pulling these together. And I think one of the just final bits on that, the interesting part we're seeing with the large, with the supermarkets in the UK is Asda has just been acquired. So there's clearly not just interest, but real hope and expectation and excitement of what this sector is going to be doing. And then we're hearing about one of the other large supermarkets at the moment that's now, had a bid for it, and that will be interesting to see how that's all playing out at the moment. But that clearly says that all this technology, yes, but also the way it's moved is clearly a lot of excitement. New people are coming into the market, into what was traditional grocers. And I think this is where all of this combines and gets quite exciting.
If I could jump in there, Peter, I think that's so interesting. And also, I think it just shows that retail is in many ways just kind of going back to the future. I mean, what you just described sounds like the 21st century version of a milkman, right? So exactly. I think it's really interesting that ultimately it's about, putting the customer at the heart of what you do. And yes, there's a lot of technology at your disposal to enhance the customer experience, but ultimately it's about knowing your customer and their needs. Yeah,
and it's back to the customer loyalty part. Yeah. Once you've got that, that's a big bonus.
So I think we're almost at time here, but I wanted to finish with a couple of concluding thoughts from you both. So Peter, maybe you can start by just expressing how you think these technologies are going to be adopted in the next couple of years, sort of incorporate a little bit of a prediction into there as to how things are going to play out.
Sure, absolutely. And I think all the things we've been talking about today are happening. We're not talking, as Natalie was just saying, we're not talking about it in 5 years and 10 years' time. So it is happening. Clearly, technology is moving at a pace and everything's got to keep up with it. So this is where we talk about new ideas, new themes, we talk about some experiences or experiments even, but they happen quickly. They go out, they tried it within 2 months, 3 months, right, it's done, we know we can move on. And I think that's what we'll see. We'll see a different picture by the end of this year. And then certainly within next year, there'll be a lot more adoption. So from what we're seeing from an RFID point of view, absolutely that adoption is accelerating. People understand it. They've seen it in other sectors, particularly in apparel. That's already accepted and used widely and clearly, has a very good business case. So they're now starting to see that, say, right, where else can we benefit from this? Where else can we employ this within the organization? If you look at a lot of the grocers, they not only sell apparel, but they sell food, they sell homewares. So all of a sudden, it makes sense to have that across the whole network to improve. But we're seeing it today. And I think that's the sort of, for me, the big part is going from 2 years ago, which isn't that long ago, to now and moving forward. It's very much, it's the here and now. It can be done and it is being done. And I think that's what's really exciting. But it's on the consumer's terms, which is what's driving it.
And Natalie, maybe you should want to finish off with some of your final thoughts and, maybe also give a bit of a prediction as to how some of these things are going to play out in the coming years.
Well, I think before I give a prediction, it's important that we very briefly look back, because the UK has one of the most sophisticated and most competitive, one of the most advanced online grocery markets in the world. But it took 2 decades for online grocery retail sales to reach just 7% of the market. And of course, during COVID, necessity being the mother of invention, within the space of 3 months, that doubled. And what we see now is a plateau, really. It's kind of hovered around the 13-14% mark. And, some people think it will continue to grow and, we'll see another doubling of the market. I mean, I personally, I'm a little bit more of a centrist, and I think that we will see a deceleration in growth, but I think the change has happened. The change to customer expectations has happened as well. So this will impact customers when they're shopping in store as well. So their expectations of a supermarket now, when they walk into a store, they expect the technology to be there. They expect a digital experience. They expect a frictionless experience. And so I think the point being that retailers have to rethink the overall, not just the overall experience that customers have when they're shopping in a supermarket, but also how the role of the store evolves in the future to reflect the shift in spend. So we are already seeing Tesco, for example, dedicating more space in store to fulfillment of online orders. We're seeing, micro fulfillment, as Peter touched on earlier. And so I think the role of the store has to evolve to, as we're seeing across all of retail, not just within grocery, it has to evolve to go beyond just selling product. It's got to be about so much more than that. It's got to facilitate online purchases. It's got to also offer something that you can't get online and give customers a reason to ditch their screens and come into the store. So I think particularly if we look at some of the larger stores and how they're repurposing their space, partnering with, Tesco and Pret is a great example, and Sainsbury's and Carluccio's. So retail moving beyond retail and giving customers a reason to come into the store, grab a cup of coffee, take their time, collect or return an online order. This really is the future. It's very much going to be blended. And I think that the main point for retailers, I would say, the one sort of lasting takeaway here is that retailers just can't afford to stand still. So there will be no return to the status quo. And it's so important for retailers to keep moving and remain agile and continue responding to all of the change that we're seeing within the industry.
Okay, I think that's plenty of food for thought for our audience to take away. Certainly, I'm sure all of us will be monitoring these trends very closely in the coming months and years. I'd like to finish up by thanking both Natalie and Peter for their contributions throughout this panel. It's been a fascinating discussion. And I'd like to thank our audience for joining us for another Grocer Vision webinar. And we hope to see you again for future webinars